When the world looks at Mount Fuji, it almost always sees perfection, balance, silence, and an absolute beauty that seems eternal. From afar, it conveys peace, as if it had emerged ready, harmonious, and motionless, drawn by nature in a single gesture. But this serene image hides a much more brutal origin. The truth is that Fuji was not born ready, and far from being peaceful. Before being a symbol of Japan, it was fire. Before inspiring reverence, it was underground pressure. Before being a landscape, it was geological violence. Its current beauty did not come from calm, but from repeated destructions accumulated over time. Its symmetry makes it seem like it belongs to order. But this order was built by instability. Its perfect shape is the final result of a chaotic past. To understand Fuji, it is not enough to observe its surface. It is necessary to imagine what exists beneath it, because the admired mountain today conceals buried stories, ancient volcanoes, forgotten layers, and eruptive cycles that slowly shaped its colossal presence. The current Fuji, at 3,776 meters in height, is the highest point in Japan. But it did not grow all at once. Its greatness results from overlapping eras, like a construction built upon buried worlds. What appears to be a single mountain is, in fact, a sum. Beneath its beauty, Mount Fuji holds the memory of several previous mountains, of ancient collapses, of deep cycles, and of a history still alive. The studies described in the appendices show that Mount Fuji went through 4 phases of formation. First came Sen Komitake, then Komitake, next Kofuji, the old Fuji, and finally Shin Fuji, the new Fuji, which corresponds to the current mountain. These phases reveal something unsettling. Fuji did not emerge all at once. Fuji was becoming, growing, covering what came before, and transforming ancient mountains into an invisible base for a new, taller, and more imposing form. For a long time, it was thought that Fuji had 3 main phases, but a geological drilling conducted in 2004 found an ancient structure buried deep. This means that Fuji's past is older than previously assumed. Beneath the famous mountain lies a subterranean archive. An archive of magma, eruptions, burials, and long intervals of transformation.
Seen this way, Mount Fuji ceases to be a postcard. It becomes a volcanic palimpsest. About 700,000 years ago, Komitake, Hakone, and Ashitaka were part of the geological base of the region. Later, Old Fuji entered intense activity. For thousands of years, it released ashes and materials that caused the mountain to grow. This growth was slow but relentless. Old Fuji would have reached something close to 3,000 meters. Some of the ashes released during that time helped form the reddish soil of Kanto. But that was still not the final Fuji. About 10,000 years ago, an eruptive phase began, gradually forming new Fuji. The mountain that seems eternal took on its most recognizable shape not long ago. Even perfection has a date of birth.
This moment coincides with something even more significant. It was around this time that the Jomon period began. This means that very ancient peoples of the Japanese archipelago were already contemplating a mountain quite close to the Fuji we know today. In other words, the current Fuji grew before human memory. Ancient generations already saw it on the horizon, already feared its presence, and perhaps realized that they were not facing a simple mountain, but something much greater than they could explain. It is at this point that Fuji ceases to be just geology. A gigantic mountain, capable of spewing fire and ash, is not perceived merely as a landscape. It becomes presence, problem, sign, emotional center, and existential reference. But there is another decisive question. If Fuji is so tall, how did it manage to grow so much without destroying itself? The answer contradicts intuition. It was not maximum violence that made it a giant.
It was a rare type of balanced repetition. According to the attachments, overly violent eruptions can explode the mountain itself. In the case of Fuji, the growth occurred because it alternated more explosive phases with calmer phases, during which lava flowed and accumulated, creating successive layers. This process of alternation between ash, fragments, and lava built the structure of a stratovolcano. That is what explains its so admired shape. Fuji was not raised by a moment of fury. It was shaped by cycles, accumulation, and repetition. Only the part above the fifth station took about 6,000 years to form. And the most impressive thing is that it still rested on previously existing mountains.
In other words, Fuji did not just grow, it inherited. Beneath its current structure lie Komitake and Kofuji, covered and incorporated. Some of these ancient formations can still be recognized in the area of the fifth station, near the Komitake shrine. This makes Mount Fuji even more fascinating. Its current grandeur depends on what almost no one sees. The most famous mountain in Japan rests upon buried giants. Its visible beauty relies on ancient structures, hidden and almost erased from the landscape. There is something profoundly symbolic about this. What appears pure rests upon ruins. What seems simple conceals complexity. What looks like a perfect unity is, in fact, a set of overlapping pasts that continue to silently support the present. Another essential element for Fuji's shape lies in the type of rock that makes up a large part of its structure.
According to the attachments, it is predominantly composed of basalt, a material associated with less viscous magma and greater flow capacity. This means that the lava from Fuji flows relatively easily, spreading widely and helping to shape its gentle and balanced slopes. It is part of the geological secret of its elegant silhouette. In many other Japanese volcanoes, andesite predominates, a rock associated with more viscous magma, which favors less fluid and more irregular shapes. In Fuji, this fluidity helped to create the admired appearance today. But there is nothing innocent about this. The mountain is beautiful because it has been ignited countless times, and its story is not over. Mount Fuji is not a dead volcano. Its recent silence does not yet mean a definitive end.
For some time, old textbooks classified Mount Fuji as an inactive or merely dormant volcano. But this view is misleading. 300 years without an eruption may seem like a lot to us. For a volcano, this hardly represents a noticeable pause. The attachments explain that there have been phases when the summit crater was active, and others when activity occurred at different points on the mountain. This shows that Fuji does not rely on a single eruptive focus to manifest its power. The most famous example of this lateral activity is the Hoi crater. It was from there that, in 1707, Fuji unleashed a historic eruption. The ash column reached great heights and spread material as far as Edo, causing fear, chaos, and unrest. This episode shatters the illusion of total stability. Even without recent eruptions, Fuji remains a mountain of living potential. It does not belong solely to the past. It still carries a threatening possibility.
Perhaps this explains why Fuji has become so powerful in the Japanese imagination. A mountain that is merely beautiful can be admired. A mountain that is merely dangerous can be feared. But a mountain that is beautiful, immense, silent, and still alive is something else. It is not just admired, it is revered, because it combines fascination and threat at the same time. And it is precisely at this point that geology touches religion. For the ancient peoples of the archipelago, Fuji was not a simple geographical accident. It was a mountain of fire, a fearsome, impressive, and sacred presence. When beauty mixes with terror, human beings respond with rituals and create collective reverence.
The attachments bring a suggestive archaeological hint. In 1970, in the city of Fujinomiya, the Sembui site was identified, associated with the Jomon. The site includes stones aligned towards Mount Fuji. This arrangement is interpreted as a ritual structure, perhaps an altar for the veneration of the mountain. If this interpretation is correct, then the reverence for Fuji is not recent. It may date back to ancient times. Think about what this means. Long before texts and formal religious systems, there were already people organizing stones, space, and direction to face Fuji. This reveals a spiritual experience rooted in the horizon. Perhaps the mountain didn't even need to be climbed to be sacred. It was enough to be seen. It was enough to dominate the landscape. It was enough to impose on humans a sense of smallness in the face of something great.
The very attachment suggests that this reverence for distance resonates in later forms of worship, preserved in places like the Yamamiya Sengen Temple. This suggests continuity between ancient practices and structured devotions. If this continuity is real, then Fuji was not only worshipped, it has been accompanied for millennia. Its presence has traversed eras and cultural transformations, remaining as a spiritual axis. This is a decisive point. Mount Fuji did not become sacred just for being tall or beautiful. It became sacred because it united greatness, threatening activity, and historical permanence. Extreme height, hypnotic shape, violent origin, temporary silence, and eruptive potential. Something too beautiful to be ignored and too dangerous to provoke reverence. Even its name remains shrouded in mystery.
Some theories bring the term Fuji closer to ideas such as non-death, incomparable, or singular beauty. Others relate it to phonetic transformations and influences from different linguistic matrices. But in the end, the name remains shrouded in mist and uncertainty. In a way, this aligns with the mountain itself. Fuji is so emblematic that even its word seems to resist a final explanation. As if language, just like geology, also holds hidden layers and buried meanings. There is a strange coherence in this. The mountain that conceals ancient volcanoes also conceals a name of uncertain origin. Everything about Fuji seems to call for interpretation, yet escapes complete closure. It reveals itself, and at the same time always retains something. The attachments also mention a striking cultural phenomenon. In various parts of Japan, local mountains have begun to be compared to Fuji and have received names linked to it. They are the so-called Furukato Fuji, the hometown Fujis. This reveals that Mount Fuji has ceased to be just a specific mountain. It has become a model, a visual, emotional, and symbolic reference. Other mountains have come to be valued because they somehow reminded people of its shape or presence. When a mountain becomes a unit of comparison for the entire country, it transcends geography. Mount Fuji is not just a monumental natural feature. It was shaped by lava, but also by human memory. It grew from the soil and grew in the imagination. It seems pure, but it was born from devastation. It appears motionless, but carries a memory of fire still latent beneath the calm. The more one knows the origin of Mount Fuji, the less it resembles a simple landscape. The mountain becomes a historical entity, a geological organism, and a symbolic center. The gaze stops seeing only form and begins to feel density. Perhaps the true power of Fuji lies in this. It unites what rarely comes together: harmony and violence, beauty and threat, visual stability and internal instability, archaic memory and current presence. It is as if incompatible orders coexist within it, and it is precisely this coexistence that makes Fuji unforgettable. A peaceful beauty can be admired, a chaotic threat can be avoided, but Fuji is neither. It is the disconcerting mix of fascination and risk. Ancient peoples likely felt this more intensely. Without modern instruments, without geology, without volcanic monitoring, they saw a monumental presence that sometimes spewed fire and ash. It was not just a mountain, it was a power.
In the face of something like this, the human being tends to seek meaning, and it is in this movement that fear can turn into worship. The threat ceases to be just a threat and becomes recognized as a manifestation of something greater, worthy of reverence. In the case of Fuji, this process seems to have been profound. The mountain not only frightened, it structured the gaze, the direction of the body, the imagination of the sacred, and the way of perceiving the horizon. Over the centuries, its presence ceased to be physical. Beneath the serenity lies solidified violence. The current Fuji is a surface built upon hidden depths.
Perhaps that's why Mount Fuji evokes so much respect, even when it is quiet. Its silence conveys not just calm, it conveys suspension, as if the mountain is on pause and not closed off, as if something within it remains incomplete, waiting for its time. This is not an empty silence. It is a loaded silence, of a presence that was once devastating and can be again. The observer does not see fire now, but knows that the mountain was born from it and still contains it. The more one contemplates Fuji, the more it reveals an uncomfortable truth of nature. Beauty does not exclude threat, and order can arise from chaos. Perhaps that's why it has become sacred. Fuji has never been just a landscape. It has been a warning, a divinity, geological memory, ancestral trauma, and a spiritual axis. Its shape is beautiful, but also laden with time, fear, eruptive repetition from generations that have learned to fear and revere it. In the horizon, Mount Fuji appears simple, but in depth, it is vast. Each layer of the slope can be imagined as a record of a phase, of an eruption, of a transformation. Fuji is not just seen, it can be read. Read as an archive of the earth, read as a memory of fire, read as a mirror of how humans transform threat into symbol. Perhaps that is what makes this mountain different from others that rise in the landscape. Fuji remains at the meeting point of two forces: the natural force that raised it through lava, ash, and time, and the human force that transformed it into an object of faith, reference, and image of Japan. The more we try to reduce it to a beautiful photograph, the more it escapes. Because Mount Fuji is not just a shape, it is a layered story, beginning underground, spanning millennia, and reaching human imagination. Perhaps that is why it remains powerful, not only because it is beautiful, but because it is beautiful after violence.